Hey there everyone, KJ Melgoza here. Let's check out how to take a kick drum from this to this. Okay, when I mix a song, I always start with balancing my tracks and then kind of setting up my buses. And I usually set up on the drum bus a bus compressor and a limiter, just so I'm going into that directly. So here you can see I have a Softube VCA compressor, and I have the Cornef Audio L1, which is a great kind of version of the L1, but probably much better, I would say, in my opinion. Anyways, so we're going to mix straight into that. So here, if we solo the kick wherever I have it, right in front of my face. So let's check out how the kick sounds by itself. Okay, not very flattering. The kick drum is it's something you really have to finesse in there. So first up, we're going to start with Silencer, which is a really cool plugin from Black Salt Audio. It's kind of hard to get a perspective on the kick when you have so much bleed happening, at least for me. So I personally like to do a little bit of this before I start doing my heavy lifting. This plugin is a drum gate, as you can imagine. It has kick, we have snare top, snare bottom, and some tom presets. I guess they're not really presets, they're profiles for the gate. So you can hear how that sounds right now. Okay, also not very flattering, but we don't have that hi-hat and the snare and everything else kind of convoluting what we're hearing. Let's take this out of the way. Next up, I actually put a multiband, and this is actually sidechained to a click track that I made of the kick drum. That was almost a mouthful and quite hard to say. So let's turn it on and you can kind of see what's going on with that. Okay, and you can see it's acting extremely fast. And that's because that click track is actually just pretty much metronome clicks. And the way I did that is I turned on a drum leveler just to really gate it really hard. And then you go up here to, let's see, what is it? Track, and replace or double drum track. And what that does is create MIDI notes for all the kick hits. And then I just have to basically set all the velocity to be the same and make sure they're totally lined up. That can be really time consuming. So if you do that, make sure you do it well, or at least spend some time to making sure that they're really lined up with your waveforms. Okay, let's get over to the kick drum bus again. And sorry, I should have said that I actually already bussed the kick drum over to this bus, or the kick mics over to this bus, and I just simply leveled them to what I heard. I can fine tune that a little more later, but I'm basically trying to, you know, move a bit quickly to kind of get to where I'm starting to hear this drum the way I want it to be. So now that we're over here, let's open up the next plugin, and this is where we're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, or where I choose to do a lot of the heavy lifting, so we can get some perspective. This is an SSL channel strip. Since this drum was recorded in a rehearsal space through a very basic kind of clean audio interface, I would like to bring a little bit of more mojo and vibe to this track. So if we turn this on, you're gonna see how it sounds. I'll tell you what I did right after. Okay, it's already sounding a lot more like a kick drum. What I did here was add a little bit of high end. You can see around 8,000. The nice high end of a metal kick drum usually lies around 8 to 10K. You have to find what works with your kick drum and with the song. So you just kind of jog this, I would say jog up the gain and then jog this frequency around. So we'll do that real quick just so you can kind of see if I move it around. You can see the higher you go, you kind of get this more clicky sound, and the lower you go, it kind of becomes, I guess, a little less clicky. In this case, I really like to not have too much of a clicky sound, so I think I had it just a little bit above 8K here. Next up, we have some of this bottom, or not bottom end, but we have some of this kind of honky frequency that ends up being around usually 1,900. And if you were making a more rock kick, you may want some more of this information. Again, this really depends on your track and your drums. So let's check out how this sounds if I was to jog this gain up here. All right, so there you go. And these drums are played well, but of course they're not perfectly even. We're gonna get to that later. Okay, so the next EQ frequency is a little bit of this boxy frequency, maybe I wanna call it, and that's around 500 Hertz, and I have a lot of that cut away. I'm gonna start this at 0 dB, and then we're gonna jog it up so you can hear what exactly I'm gonna be removing back away. You can kind of hear it has this kind of paperish characteristics to it. Let's see, where did I have that? I had it -17. None of these exact frequencies or dB are actually going to completely matter to you. You can try them as a starting point, but each drum is different than each song. I can't stress that enough. The last EQ we're going to do with this SSL plugin is this very low 150 Hertz frequency. And this is that pillowy frequency. And you're going to really hear how this brings that metal character into this kick drum. We're going to start it off again at 0 dB. I'm going to jog it up and then I'll jog it back away. So I actually want to cut more of that away, but we're going to do that later on. Now we're getting a pretty healthy kick drum sound. And I'm going to do just a little bit more, again, as if I was going to be going into an actual console when this drum was recorded. So I have just a little bit of dynamics happening on this. It's just a hair of compression and a hair of expansion. And the expansion is going to take away a little bit more of that high end and the cymbals and stuff happening. And the compression is just going to start kind of shaping our kick a little bit more. This next plugin is called Drum Leveler, and it's seriously some voodoo magic and something I could not live without while mixing drums. Here's how it looks. Here's the more modern interface. It used to look a little bit different, but they've updated it. If I turn it on, you're going to hear exactly what this is doing. It's going to add some compression, and what it's going to do is try to even out all the hits. And especially when you're trying to just use a raw drum without triggers, this is going to be something that's essential to getting that kind of triggered sound with a kick drum. Okay, and what you're seeing here is the blue hits are the strong hits, so to say, and then the orange hits were the ones that weren't actually making it up to par. And what this does is just kind of, yeah, as I said already, even it out. And here as well, we have a gate. Even though we're not using it very heavily, I did turn it on just a bit to try to clean it up even more to try to get to that triggered sound. Next up is the oh so familiar FabFilter Pro Q3. You can see I just have a few bands here, nothing too crazy. Cutting out some more of that pillowy frequency, or maybe not quite that same pillowy frequency, but a little higher up at 246. I have a little cut around 900. This is kind of that radio frequency and can lead to that basketball sound a bit. I have raised just a hair around 1500 to kind of give it, I would want to call it not the click, but the clack, the smack. Smack's a good sound for it. So the smack of that, and we're raising up a little more again, a little higher, almost towards that 10K at just a little over 9,000. I found one frequency was kind of ringing in the lower bit of my kick drum, and that was kind of causing the low end to get a little blurred. So I took that out quite a lot, as you can see, 20 decibels. But I have that at the tightest Q that I can do, almost the tightest Q I can do. And we have a low pass to clean up our subs, and that's just essential if you kind of want a clean low end. So I'm going to turn this on, we're going to hear how it sounds, and then I'm going to pull up a couple of these that I feel are a little more life-changing for the sound of this drum. You can see we really start getting that plasticky sound, and that's something I kind of want in this. We're going to bring that back, at least a low end, in just a minute, but this is where we're going to go for the moment. I'm going to show you what a few of these bands are actually doing. So let's start off with this lower one. I'm going to highlight a section so we don't have to keep going past, and now I'm going to jog them around so you can kind of see what each of these bands are actually doing. Why you see that top band moving just a little bit, it's what's called a dynamic band. So it's kind of raising with the kick drum as it happens, kind of like an expander. And it just gives me a little more character I want. It's not something you have to do, and it's definitely not life-changing for this drum. Okay, next up, I'm going to use a good old Transient Designer. Here we have the SoftubeStudios version, and this sounds great. I mean, there's plenty of transient shapers out there. This is just happens to be the one I reached for when I was mixing this kit. This kick. And I don't think there's any, massive winner in that kind of category. I would say just kind of pick what you need and then, or pick what you want and then see if it works for your application. Depending on how heavy you're using it, this can be subtle or this can be a little bit more crazy, really adding a lot of attack or sustain to the drum depending on what you want. Here, I'm just doing just a little bit of lifting with it, so it's not doing too much. Next up is something I found to replace our bass for me, as Waves has kind of done some things that I don't really appreciate. So I've been trying to get rid of all of my Waves plugins slowly but surely. And this one I found a great replacement for that R bass. What it is, it's a bass exciter and as well as a compressor. So what I'm doing here is I'm enhancing the frequency at 60 Hertz and then I'm compressing below 100 Hertz. Not very much on the compression, you'll see, but you're gonna feel and hear a lot of that sub come back, and it's really reactive to the bass or to the kick, which I like, and that's what I want with my metal, especially when you hear later on I have these double kicks happening. It's going to kind of keep those under control while still allowing them to punch through on each hit. Yes, definitely something quite significant for the kick drum, especially in this case when we're not having the triggers come in. Next up, I just have the stock Logic compressor, and this is an SSL style emulation. I have some pretty normal settings, what you would want to use for a kick drum. I have around 30 milliseconds, 32 milliseconds actually on the attack, 48 on the release. I have 6 on the ratio, and the threshold won't matter for you as you have to really judge that on your drum and how much you're going to pull it up or down. So here's how it sounds with the compressor turned on. With it off again. Built into this is a little bit of, I guess, saturation, and it's called distortion in here though, and you have off, soft, hard, and clip. Depending on what you're mixing, you can try each of them and you can get some more attack or some more body. For me right now, I found soft kind of had the vibe I wanted with this kick drum. I'll turn it off so you can hear what that's exactly adding as well. And we'll turn it back on. Yeah, that's not doing so much, I would say. It's not a game changer, but it definitely is doing a little bit of something I like. Okay, next up is a good old handy tape emulation. This is another Softube plugin. There's plenty of tape emulators out there. I have it set up on the 15 IPS and the Type A, and not doing a crazy amount of saturation, because if you do a crazy amount of saturation on kick drum, it can also get a little blurry and it won't have as much dynamics. So you don't want to go too heavy with that there. So let's turn it on and hear how that sounds. And with it off, saturation does not hurt anybody. And the next up is just a little gain plugin. The only purpose this is serving is actually to kind of tame the kick down when I have these double kicks coming in over here. Lastly, but not least, we have a parallel compression. And I'm going to mute the snare drum and no, that's all I need to mute. So you can hear what the parallel compression is bringing to that as well. And let's first mute it, and then I'm going to turn it on. I'm using it a little bit more to bring some more body and give a little more sustain, kind of as if a Transient Designer, but I'm doing it to both the kick and the snare in a parallel process here. Okay, now that we've turned everything back on, I'm going to turn off the solo, and let's hear exactly how this kick drum is sounding in this mix. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn on the snare. Let's try that out again. I'm KJ Melgoza. Until next time, stay heavy.